Alright.
Oh, this is the Tooton photo shop store.
There with those. Okay.
What I did was I digitized most of the articles and I just printed them.
He was baptized a Christian in Damascus, Syria. I've seen the baptismal certificate. I've had some correspondence with the church where he was baptized, actually.
I would say most came between 1900 and 1914. So they counted between 200 and 300 so-called Syrians.
I would think my earliest recollection would be as a young girl, sitting on his lap and talking to him in very simplistic French terms, oui papi, no papi, because where he came through France as a young individual, when he came to Newfoundland, I'm led to believe all he could speak was French. And even though we didn't hear him speak a lot of French, there were always those little sayings sitting on his lap.
He was very responsible with the monopoly that he had, the way that he priced his products, and the way that he poured back into the community a significant amount of his profits in a way that not all monopolists would necessarily do, given the temptations that were in front of them.
Tooton's, this must have been an anniversary. Tooton's 50th. Got it. Tooton's 50th. Among other things he did, he built the swimming pool at the Victoria Park in the West End. And he was involved with all the community affairs at that particular time. A very well-known person who contributed largely and greatly towards this city, and a great Rotarian.
The Newfoundlanders always wanted more British, more Irish. They didn't want people from the Middle East. So, judged by that, we assumed they had difficulties adjusting.
He was a member of the original group of Rotary, and I think he was given the highest award in Rotary, which is the Paul Harris Fellowship. Paul Harris Fellow at that particular time.
And you see this here, I was working across the street a few years ago, and I was looking at, and this is after the business closed, and my grandfather sold the building, and they had jackhammers chopping up the Tooton sign.
Oh man,
It's crazy.
so cool. Like, you get all the ads. It's like
Trevor?
congratulating.
Regardless if you were a relative or an individual in the community, he was a very generous man. He had a lot of love to give, and he was just outstanding in that regard. A very lovable man who would always want to do and to please.
Now, of course, Kodak Canada, I believe, only came on the scene after 1949 in Confederation, and prior to that all the dealings were, I shouldn't say all the dealings, most of the dealings were with Eastman Kodak in Rochester, New York, and to some extent Stuttgart, Germany, where some of the cameras came from, and lenses. And my grandfather always felt that, I think to some extent he regretted that the business switched to Toronto, but he accepted the reality of that, change, and that he would be dealing with a different branch of the organization, a multinational company that it is.
Water Street was the main shopping centre at that time, because I'd say of all the fish that was caught in Newfoundland, 90 cents of every codfish came to Water Street, about 6 blocks. Very successful street, and the competition was there. But for a city of this size, in those early years, to have 4 department stores in one city, and of course these department stores weren't only retail stores, they were wholesale business as well. They had distributorship for all the main products that came from the mainland, or well, up to Confederation, the buying was done in New York or in Europe. And it was only after Confederation that we were sort of forced into buying from Canada.
It was a very, very unique and special relationship that he had with Kodak. I never had to tell anybody who Tootons were, or where we were located, or what we did, or what we meant to Kodak. Doors opened, no question about it, based on that history. And it made business very, very smooth with Kodak, very rewarding.
I knew his business operation was run with an ironclad hand. He was a very dogmatic character and very strong-headed, and I'm sure his business was run in the same manner. One real big memory I have working in the stores is even in my time in the late 70s or in the mid-70s, there was always one woman designated to the cash. That was one thing in his store. So that you'd have 7 or 8 girls on the floor, but whenever there was a transaction to be made and a cash deal done, you would hear in the store, cash please, and one girl was always dedicated to that cash. And I guess that being his reason of keeping a control on the situation, if something were to go wrong with the till at the end of the day, he always knew you'd only have one girl to address.
He was just, at that time, as was my father, a very successful businessman who had built a business.
So when you look back at the whole scenario and every aspect of the history of Tootons and your involvement, do you look back with generally fond memories?
Generally fond memories. Sad ending, but very fond memories. It provided a real interesting career and an income and a livelihood. And overall, I'm very grateful that I had that experience. Ultimately, and he would have understood this as well as anybody else, it's business, and business has to make sense to carry on. If it's not in the mutual economic interests of everybody, then it shouldn't carry on.